So, welcome to the third edition of our evening Adda. We discussed the role of motivation in the learning process in our first session, and then we followed that up with how choice plays a role in the learning process in our second Adda. And the focus for today's discussions is really what sort of opportunities exist in terms of learning beyond the classroom. Right? And in particular, we're going to try and focus on children who are in grades 6 through 10 for today. And the next session of the Adda will focus on the younger age group. So welcome once again. I will not spend time introducing our panelists here, Radha, Soumya, and Vishnu. Most of you have attended either the first or the second Addas. Very briefly, though, Radha is our expert on sustainability. She doesn't like she doesn't like being called an expert. She's an environmental scientist by training. Spent several years being a consultant outside the country, and she was teaching environmental sciences at Rishi Valley for about 8 years in a residential context. Right? Soumya has spent several years teaching in different schools. She's formally trained in Montessori methods. She's also a mentor on GenWise. Vishnu, founder of GenWise, academic director, many of you know him already. So without further ado, let's just get into the topic for today, learning beyond the classroom. And we had a brief discussion on this a couple of days ago. And Soumya, Radha, and Vishnu have a few thoughts to share with all of you to set the background and context, and then we can have the interactive sessions. I'll look to you, Soumya, first. Could you just spend 2-3 minutes just talking about, what do you see as the need for children in terms of learning beyond the classroom? Maybe even, needs from a learning perspective. If you could just set that foundation, we can pick it up from there, please.
Yeah, sure. Hi people, welcome. Nice that you could join us on this Saturday morning. Okay, so the needs from a Montessori perspective is actually quite well laid out for this age group. And the overarching sort of philosophy there is to aim for what Montessori calls the valorization of the personality, which means to build a sense of self-worth, dignity, independence, the ability to contribute to the economy, to other people, to help, to see oneself as a useful, productive being out there in society with the values in place. So this is the overarching sort of aim for education at this age in the Montessori framework.
Sorry to interrupt, Soumya. In many ways, also what Sindhu was probably referring to last week, right, in the last session. In terms of just bringing up somebody with values.
Right. For the values. Yeah, correct. That's true. And so the three pillars on which this rests for these years will be creative expression, physical expression, and what Montessori called occupations. So this age being filled with angst, thanks to hormones, thanks to growing, thanks to a society that's not so receptive to the needs of the society of this age group, creative expression becomes extremely critical. They need avenues to express themselves either as performing arts, music, theater, dance, drama, whatever, or fine arts. Clay, painting, sculpture. Making things, creativity, beads, stitching, whatever. Glass work, whatever. They need to use their hand. They need to express themselves, and they need to get their view of the world out there and question and use art for what it is to project their view of the world out there in some creation. So creative expression is a big thing. Another big thing is physical expression, because they're growing at this enormous rate, both physically and triggered off by hormones as people. That transition to adulthood is quite traumatic. One, and two, they seem to really need that literal release of energy. They need to be out there, play, whether it's football or frisbee or basketball or hiking or running or whatever it is. They need a guided, structured program, which really releases the energy in them. Boys this age particularly seem to need to have some aggressive angle to the sport, and So this whole physical expression is a very big thing. And they really love the fact that they can train themselves. And I could do only 3 minutes of running 1 month back, but now I'm able to run for 15 minutes. So they love that tracking and that being able to sort of admire their bodies actually more than anything else. They love it. They love the muscles and the look and the, so it's naturally. So anyway, they're very self-obsessed at this age. So this way you're giving them a nicer body to obsess with, and so they're it satisfies that need also. The other thing, occupations, is most interesting, and it's also interesting to note that of these three, our typical quadratic equations kind of education doesn't really fit into this framework, into just these three. But the way we see it and the way Montessori schools are run is they have a fourth angle to it, which they add on, which we will call the academics, which will be things that don't fit into these three directly, like languages, for example, like math, or like literature. I mean, no, literature can also be used for creative expression, but the academic studying from textbooks, we will have another angle to it. So the occupational angle is extremely critical. So they constantly need to be at something that interacts, where they're interacting with the real world through an expert either in agriculture, through an expert in clay, through an expert in metalworking, through an expert in programming, through a dentist, through whatever, through multiple channels. They need to interact with the real world out there through an expert. And to deliver all this to them, ideally you need somebody in the middle who sort of interacts with the children on one hand and interacts with the experts on the other hand, and sort of buffers the content and the delivery and the program, that kind of thing. So this is the overall sort of schema, which is how this program for this age has been designed, and which I have worked with some years ago.
Hey, Soumya, thank you so much for that context. Just one additional point about Soumya's background, everyone. Soumya and her family have lived at Oroville. They're Aurovilleans. They've lived at Oroville for nearly 5 years, which is why Soumya speaks with such great passion about seeing people work with their hands, specialize in things that they're interested in. There are nearly 150 to 200 communities in Oroville, each of which specializes in many of these areas that Soumya just touched upon. Thanks, Soumya.
Sure.
So Radha, over to you now. I just wanted to pick up from what Soumya just laid out to see if there are experiences from Rishi Valley in the residential context, that you could provide examples of, or even some of the Oroville programs that you've led, in terms of how moving outside the classroom might enable learning to be more effective, please.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. So I thought there was this one other angle that I think is very important to talk about for this age, and that's the whole issue of sexuality, right? The issue of, and just as, Soumya was just talking about the hormonal development, and sort of, it almost seems like there's a yo-yoing kind of thing that's happening there. The other very closely related to that is neuroplasticity, the development of the brain, right? I mean, so that combination of how rapidly, and of course, there's a lot of work that's been done, and that has actually helped, I think, a lot of us to really understand this simmering sort of, or often exploding sort of a volcanic phase of one's life, which of course comes back to us at other points when hormonal shifts happen. But, this is more so when we're talking about teenagers and this particular age group. So this has a very interesting and challenging at many levels, both for the young people and the people who are engaging with them. And I'm speaking primarily here as a facilitator, educator sort of a thing. And having been part of a residential school and also engaging with some non-residential school children. So here, this is where it becomes very tricky, and I thought I'd just take one example or some, sort of experiences. And typically in a school environment, whether it is residential or even non-residential, this management, or how does one handle this emotional aspect associated with sexuality, which is also part of the whole creativity process as well. Okay, right? And also the other part that Soumya were talking about, the physical action, you know, getting out there, playing and expending some of that, you know, what we call energy, but basically expending this rapid growth, which the young person is unable to sort of process at one level. But at the same time, also providing opportunities for some level of quietening, which in the GenWise programs, we've tried to do that, right? I mean, to sort of, you know, be able to have some point of reflection while there is a need to have all of this excitement, but also build in the reflection. And in my experience, what has happened, you know, as teachers or as institutions, often we focus so much more on the disciplinary part of it, which means, you know, the academics or even the sport and the creative and even so-called alternative sort of environments of schooling, etc. Even there, a lot of the times the focus is, because you're dealing with a larger number of kids, the focus is on all of this. So somewhere this whole emotional element of the neurological hormonal combination often gets affected. Okay. So this a very class. I mean, this is one of my favorite examples is of this young person who was in school with us, and the school decided for disciplinary purposes, because it was to do with you know, having flouted one of the school's regulations of exclusive relationships between boys and girls, for example. And the child, you know, sort of rebelled and decided that she would do exactly what she wanted to do. So the school decided not to call her back for the 11th grade. That enormously upset the child, because this was a very intelligent, creative, very good at music, all of those things, right? But, you know, as an institution, you know, there are limitations for institutions as well. And there are certain rules one has to lay out if you're managing 800, 900 kids. So anyway, the child left, but the child stayed in touch with several of us. So we started mentoring her, because she decided she will not go anywhere for her 11th and 12th if she doesn't come back to the school. So she decided to take 2 years off, decided to do NIOS, appeared for 12th in open school, etc. You know, and several of us sort of did some mentoring from within, you know, because there was a relationship. There, I mean, it's important to differentiate between the institution and you as an individual in terms of relationship. Parents were at sea in the beginning, and then after that, slowly it all sort of settled in. But this was, and then of course now she's doing very well for herself. You know, she finished her 12th open school and then went into Ambedkar to do university, and now in Harvard doing her master's. So the story ended very well there, but as a school, it was quite a challenge for the school to deal with something like this, and also a huge learning experience for the school at many levels. As to, you know, because subsequently there were a lot of changes that happened in how one engages with young people in terms of you know, providing the right atmosphere, emotional support, facilities. I mean, there are innumerable examples one could go into of children who really sort of have had a lot of difficulties in the process. But I think what's important to come away with is that, you know, the creative, the physical, all of these are so closely tied to the neurological hormonal aspect that it's very important for us, I think, as educators, parents, etc., to see how can we how can we bring these things together in a way where, and Soumya and I've often talked about this, it takes a village, and the village doesn't exist anymore to bring up a child. So how do we create this village, you know? I mean, you know, how is that? And I think in GenWise, some of the things we try to do is to see, is it even possible to sort of co-create this village with parents and other, you know, similar. I think I'll stop there. Yeah.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Radha. There's so much more that you can speak about, including how you actually conceived of and designed the whole Auroville program for school children, which again is an out of school, beyond the classroom kind of a learning. And maybe we can speak about it later on in this discussion, right? Vishnu, I wanted to move over to you to to just see if there was, maybe you can pick up on this, Vishnu. You know, there are so many subjects that we see that we get our children to do in schools. This has got a huge context and background to periods and timetables and things like that. And then, you know, schools also do a lot of effort in terms of outbound programs, getting children to experience the world and nature outside of the school context, etc. You know, what additional thoughts might you have in terms of, you know, what children must try and be exposed to beyond the classroom? You also have had extensive discussions with other experts outside the country as well. I know you speak to Paula from Northwestern quite regularly. So it'd be interesting to hear some of your and her perspectives through you.
Thanks, Rajesh. So I'll come in a couple of minutes to what you mentioned, but I'm going to go back to what Radha was talking about the village, and Soumya was talking about the needs of the child at this stage. So interestingly, the village has gone away. And yes, in a sense, we need to replace it. Of course, the village has some advantages and the city has some other advantages, right? Because the city has people from different villages, different countries, different perspectives. So I was just thinking as Radha was speaking, whether the today's modern world actually allows us a chance to create a richer village. On one hand, we've lost the village, but perhaps we can create a richer village, right? And going back to what Soumya talked about, the needs of the child in terms of a certain mentor who will be respected, the occupation part will connect you with the world. Because of the shortage of time, Soumya did mention a couple of other things. One is she's spoken about children at this age needing a structure and needing to be in certain kinds of groups. And I'm going to use that, you know, to lead into what GenWise has tried to do and how we try to evolve. So very quick history of GenWise, because we are also evolving, we are learning about all these things. And so one thing we've realized is, yes, it genuinely takes a village to raise a child, because there are these mentors who have certain expertise, children have a need to connect with them. But then there are these doctors, for example, who sometimes tell us that maybe the child has iron deficiency, you know, if he's not sitting steady. So there are definitely a lot of different perspectives, and I don't think any one party can do it. I would say that the parent is, of course, the most important party here. The parent is the systems integrator, very closely supported with the school. So I would put school number 2.
Is that your own phrase, Vishnu, systems integrator?
Yeah. It's, I think parent as a systems integrator is a phrase I just put out there in some other context, which we'll not talk today. So when we started this, we started mainly with the idea of, so I didn't even start it, right? We were basically copying what Johns Hopkins and Duke were doing in the US. We said, hey, they're getting all these great mentors, and why don't we provide a similar experience in India, 3-week residential program. But can you hear me, Rajesh?
Yes.
Yeah. But as we got into it, as we dipped our toes into this, started doing it, we saw a lot of potential, and we saw that we don't have to do things necessarily in the American value system, right? We realized that we have a culture, we have certain traditions, Montessori has certain insights. So we started inserting, so for example, the American residential program is a very, very hyper program, you know, children are always excited and this thing, and there are certain good things about that. You don't want children to get homesick when they're away from home. But we started realizing that we could bring in a certain element of centeredness, silence. It started in a very small way with in the dining room, how Shrikant and Radha used to get them to do a 5-minute pranayam meditation, and instead of, you know, rushing to the table for food, each group of children would go separately. Then someone mentioned Auroville, which Rajesh has been talking about, and because Soumya and Ramji were from Auroville, we took children to Auroville, and in fact, I think some of the KCI people are here, and there was a child from that school who was a very bright child, but he also had certain, you know, issues in terms of impulse control and so on. And even in a short period of 4 days, one could notice a lot of changes in him, right? So then we realized that there's a certain power of interacting with children in nature, in a silent way, meditation. Awareness through the body was one of the exercises done there. So we brought that in. We brought a lot of, even in the first program, Ramji and Murli had brought in, working with the hands. So children made a stool chair. So we've been sort of learning and evolving as we go along. And I think there are two sort of important aspects, I would say. One important aspect, so there is the structure, there is this different residential environment. Lot of intense learning is happening. There is a very rich buffet of different things you can sort of taste. So one is the mentor, somebody you respect, and he is able to answer your questions, or if he can't answer your questions, at least he's willing to learn with you. I think that's a very important aspect. This feeling connection without devices. It's not very easy for a parent or even a school. Maybe if it's a residential school, they have a better aspect. Like Radha has spoken about how Sunday mornings with Shantaram, I think, you would go and see the birds. But for a non-residential school, also it's a little hard always to create the necessary connection. So creating this deep connection without devices is an important thing. And the third thing which is very important is being able to notice children in different environments and contexts, because we are discovering the child in the process of him or her interacting with the environment in terms of a task given or what is available. So I'll give you an example of this, right? So one of the children who's been coming to us for the last 3-4 years, very bright child, but very nervous, not able to listen, pay attention, stick with something for a long time. And honestly, a lot of us got frustrated with him. And he had a sugar addiction, right? He was, drinking Coke, eating sugar. And one change happened when he went to Auroville. Around that time, he got into the school basketball team. And then this child came again after 1 or 2 years to our summer program, and much calmer, still some issues were there. But one of the mentors told me, so I was telling him, hey, this kid is not paying enough attention, right? And he said, but have you noticed that when we gave them this complex geodesic thing to assemble, he was the only one who stayed at the end, went late 15 minutes to lunch. Everybody else gave up at one point. So we discovered that he was a different person when he had to do things with his hands. So, I'm going to sum up now in the next 30 seconds. So basically, I think what GenWise is doing is to sort of play one role in that village, which is to provide these experiences, these mentors. They're experimenting with these things. And I would say that the parent really has to, by the age of 14 at least, starting maybe as young as 6-7 years of age, try to give a lot of different experiences and notice the child in these environments. And it's only then can we really help the child to be what he or she is meant to be.
Vishnu, thank you. Anybody else would like to share your perspectives about learning beyond the classroom? Sindhu, Aarti, Bala, anybody on the meeting? Vivek, Vikas? I mean, there are no answers here. This is such a wide ocean where we stumble and fall and pick up and learn from, the experiences of ourselves or others in the past. So we're just, the intent is the only thing here. We're just trying to be in a better place. So experiments are constantly being undertaken. So it'll be great to actually hear from all of you in terms of what it is that you think is working, is not working, that we could do better in and outside of the classrooms as well.
So this is a question for Rajesh and Vishnu. So while my kids at home continue to do lots of hands-on activities because they don't have a choice, they're at home right now, is GenWise planning to curate programs that would engage in kids doing, I don't know, plumbing related, fixing bulbs, you know, things like that. That would again be hands-on. That would, you know, they would, you know, learn sciences, and of course, they would indirectly be helping out at home as well.
Yeah, that's
we did have a parent, sorry Vishnu, we had a course called Introduction to Electronics about 2 years ago. It was facilitated by Ramji. And it was a two or 3 week course, I don't remember. I know that's a fairly long time. It was a residential setting. The very first thing one of the parents said when the kid came back home, apparently he fixed a switch in his home and the mom was super happy. Right? Although we had hoped he had learned a lot more. But thanks for asking that question. In fact, what we don't really do is to just teach how to do a particular transaction. So in particular, Ramji, the facilitator for this electronics session, he was very, very keen that kids understand the basics of electricity and electronics. And before they could do some real practical things around the house as well. So while we did that in a face-to-face context, we have to think about how to present it on a virtual platform like this. We also have a session right now where we are experimenting with origami, Sindhu. It's not just about origami as an art form, but I think the focus is on learning math, principles of mathematics, geometry, fractions, and all of that by working with your hands, working with paper, and so on. Vishnu, your thoughts, please?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question, and I think she's asking in the context of this online situation. So I've been talking to some of our mentors, particularly Utpal and Sukanya, to see how this can be done. And there are some ideas out there. See, even in the origami class, there was learning for us, because when you fold a paper, it's not very easy for the other person to see how exactly you're folding it. So we have been thinking of such things. I think, you know, the bulb or the so we did discuss an idea about, you know, you take a water heater and you look at the specs and can children estimate how long it will take. So I think it's going to take us a couple of months. I'm sure we'll come out with something like this. Maybe in August or September, you can expect a hands-on course from us.
Just to expand on what Utpal said, Sindhu, in another residential course last year, Utpal actually did a session on working with devices around your home, right? So he picked up a water heater or a microwave or whatever, and he just got the kids to dismantle it and estimate, what are the basic parameters of each of those devices. And that was really good. We still have to think about how to translate that in this virtual context. Thank you.
Right, like even things like carpentry as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the challenges, Sindhu, one of the reasons we've been slow on this also is a lot of this requires some special tools, which we used to bring with us, right? And which unfortunately are lying in Soumya's basement unused for the last 6 months, and they must be very sad. So we can do some things with, paper cutters, scissors. That is something we can start with. And yeah, if that catches on, maybe we can ask people to buy some more, because woodworking and stuff like that online is hard unless, but here is something with, because I know you're from KC High. So if a school is starting in some small way, hopefully in August, September, right? And you have these tools, but you don't have a facilitator, we can certainly look at that. So there are 5 children out there and we are facilitating that. Right now we are limited because you may not have a soldering iron and this IC chip and so on. So we'll probably do things with paper and household appliances to start with.
Right. So actually we do carpentry in school. We have a tinkering program.
Okay.
But I was thinking the perspective of, even bonding, if you did something for a parent and child to come together and sign up for the course together. So besides learning together, building skills together, because I think this whole online learning is here to stay probably till the end of the calendar year. So something that, something again, beyond the curriculum.
Yeah. So can I respond to that also?
Yeah, please, Soumya.
Yeah. I was going to say that I was going to draw her attention, Sindhu, to this course we have just finished 2 runs of, and we're starting one soon on culinary skills. And this is exactly the model we are sort of opening that for a parent who can sign on with a child. So this is not so much a recipes, cooking kind of a course, but a sense of what is the science behind cooking and what ingredients do and how chemistry works and what is gluten and why is cinnamon, do you do cinnamon in milk? Why do you typically soak saffron in milk and not water, for example? No, I'm just saying that which comes to top of my head, but essentially it is the science of cooking in some sense. And so this is a senior prof who's at the Culinary Institute in Manipal, and he offers this course. And this is exactly this model that you're suggesting. It is a parent and a child. So cooking sort of lends itself to that. I was just going to say that carpentry and electrical will also do. The only minor issue will be safety there. So the parent will have to take on that responsibility completely from GenWise. Yeah,
so So personally, I'm very excited about this parent-child bonding thing. But I think we will learn and find our way. So for example, this culinary science thing, there were 2 or 3 parent-child combinations who were really excited, worked together. But in a lot of other cases, it was not really working out. For example, a 10 or 11-year-old child is very happy to be with his parent in the course. But a 14, 15-year-old is not so happy to be with the parent in the course. And then if the parent speaks, the child feels he should not speak. So I think we are also trying to fine tune and see how to make that work. But I think we can try some other. So for example, even the Kutaka Aryabhatta math, Kutaka is an algorithm which Aryabhatta used many years ago. It's still the best way to solve indeterminate equations in math. So there are some parent-child combinations out there. They're doing homework separately. They discuss at home. So I think it's a great idea. And I think not just, I think it's a superb idea, not just because the parent-child bonding, because the energy in the house is going to be different, right? The moment those discussions happen. Is Aarti there on the call?
Yes.
Aarti, do you want to share about the discussion over homework in the, I think the
exponentials thing.
Naveen Kabra exponentials course, if you recall anything of that.
Yeah, so this usually becomes our dining table conversations. So with Naveen, I think Yuktav had learned something about exponential, and it became like over 3 days we were discussing about it. So to talk about this parent-child classes together as well. So we had some open classes going on at KC. So my husband and Yuktav took a course on history, Cold War history and the Cold War. So I could see the entire week. Of course, I was left out of the conversation, but they both had a lot to talk about.
Nice.
So I think it brought in a lot of bonding, and that learning kind of continued beyond the course. So I think opportunities like that beyond the classroom are absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I think we should try
Since
this.
I'm particularly excited about this card game Bridge, I will also spend 30 seconds on it. We do sessions for kids to discover Bridge through an intermediate game called Hool. And we started out with that this program was going to be exclusively for children. And now we've opened it up for grown-ups, parents, teachers as well. So several parents have now started to sign up for these courses after their kid had done the course or vice versa, so that they can play this together because the course is just 10 hours long or whatever. But beyond that, we're also trying to build a community of players, within the family, it's a nice opportunity to spend time together.
So Sindhu, one interesting nugget which you might not have thought of when you said parent-child. So a 45 or 50-year-old parent called me and said he wants to play bridge with his 75, 80-year-old parents. So his mother and father were there, senior citizens. He was there, and simultaneously in the same class, one of my batchmates with his 22-year-old daughter who's just passed out from Toronto or somewhere. So parent-child, even at a much older level, has been happening. So please do share ideas with us. I see one of the reasons I'm a little reticent is I've also had experiences with parents when they are the children where they just don't allow the child to do the activity on her own. They keep telling the child, do this, do that. So we have very, very anxious parents. So we'll have to find a way to, moderate this, especially when they are at home with the child, Yeah.
We have about 10 minutes to go. Thanks, Sindhu, for kicking off that thread. Any other comments and thoughts? Others?
Yeah. So Vikas here. Hey, Rajesh and Vishnu, sir.
Yeah.
So, with regards to the bridge thing, I was actually myself very interested to learn that. But when I saw that 6 to 10, it kind of, demotivated me that I could possibly can't pick up that, because I know my dad has been playing bridge for 30 odd years. And I remember actually looking at a Sunday newspaper, primarily to, see the hands, right? But I got a hang of it. But if there's a program where I and my, my wife and my kids, all four of us could actually, do that.
Wow.
And then 10 hours we actually do play a game which
which
I used to play in my college. So I've actually taught my kids a game called 29, of course, not very but all of us possibly spend at least a couple times a week spending about 4 hands, about half an hour, 40 minutes. And I think it's a good thing that at least something that we do together apart from eating.
Right.
But
there's enough written about bridge and the benefits of, I would rate it on par or even better than a chess in terms of testing out and challenging our cognitive abilities. And it also has a social angle, like you just said. Yes, you just play by yourself.
Right. So if there's a course that's coming up where all of us could join, I think I'll be, we as a family would jump on it right away.
Okay, noted.
All right. The other thing that I wanted to mention was Vishnu sir is aware of both my kids who've had some residential programs, right, a couple of times. So you talked about occupational interest, right? So I don't see a specific interest in my elder one. I would still say that he's sharp enough, but I think his in the last year or so, since he got into 10th grade, he's been, of course, playing a lot of more on Xbox and all of that, right? Less on phone, but more on Xbox. So and of course, he's choosing engineering as possibly the way to go with 11th and 12th, choosing the PCM and computer sciences. But I've had discussions with you, Vishnu sir, in the past that I would definitely want him to be mentored with somebody who's outside of us, right? Because I take parents for granted, right? When I'm in a conversation about engineering, both of us, me and my wife, are engineers. I think the focus isn't there, right? He doesn't want to possibly even have a discussion. And I recollect Soumya mentioning that, and I think Ms. Radha as well, that the kids don't want to even go on a vacation with you, right? Forget about having. And I think I completely agree. They just don't want to have one. Especially my 16-year-old, my 13-year-old, absolutely. I can see a sea change between the two, right? There's a lot of difference. So I wanted to see, is there a way that GenWise or, and it's not that, it could be engineering, could be anything, just opening up, what's there in the world outside, so that at least he gets a perspective. So how do we, so is there a way that GenWise could help that? Maybe have those one-on-one sessions?
Yeah, so we've had this conversation earlier, Vikas, and not just with you and other parents. And in this non-pandemic situation, certainly there are a lot of opportunities, and we can meet in person, we can do some projects together and stuff like that. In the current situation, we'll have to brainstorm and see if we can come up with something. I have personally offered my time. I'm happy to talk with your 16-year-old. We can. I do think we had this conversation in the first Adda, right, last Saturday. So I think somehow if we can flip this role. So I think your elder one, if somebody who's not the parent, after building a relationship, gives a project which involves a little bit of something which he's already interested in. It could be, so for example, Naveen, one of our mentors, Naveen Kabra, who's a very good computer scientist, he tweeted about how the best way to learn Python is through non-trivial projects. So there might be something like that, which, if he takes up, it might, create a different kind of energy. So we can talk offline, try some experiments. So
yeah, that'll be good. I'll possibly send you an.
If I can just add to that, Vikas, it's
Yes.
also about other dimensions, right? Because often, say you're a 16-year-old, like you said, may not, even though you both are engineers, may really not want to engage. But there are also other dimensions to his growth which he may be interested in engaging in. So when you talk about one-on-one mentoring, there is also some value to having him have conversations with people who are completely different from what who are in areas that are completely different from what he's interested in.
Absolutely.
Because I really think that, like say for example, I mean, if he's interested in, say, I'm sure, or most kids are, music or, art or something where a different side of his brain is going to be sort of excited and challenged. So even that, can sometimes just create this thrill and I've seen it happening so many times that, I mean, just something for you to think about, because,
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think I'll send you an offline email, Vishnu sir, and then we'll take it forward from there.
Yeah. Let's brainstorm. So given his interest in devices, I'm already thinking that we should get him to build a game, and a good, tough to build game, and get someone to mentor him on that.
Yeah. Sounds good. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, people? There's Bala, Vivek, Sindhu and Aarti have kind of shared some perspective. We have a couple of minutes to go. Oh, panelists, any other final thoughts?
Yeah.
You don't have to extend it. Bala?
Yeah.
Thanks so much. I think it's been very enlightening as a parent, because I'm exactly at the crossroads and I can relate to many of the things that people spoke about. And I also resonate with what Sindhu said. We need to give them something hands-on, because school is online, all their extracurricular activities are online. Can we give them something, where they engage without using the computer or any other device and connect? Because the interests are different for my son, I would probably ask, can you start a book club or something?
Oh yeah, that's a
creative writing thing, or something to do with debating, or how to even create some visual media things which can go into social media to express themselves creatively, because I see him to be a little bit more interested in these things. But I also would ask what Vikas asked. Definitely a mentor who's not a parent will be a great welcome, because how much ever we communicate, but they do withhold, or they think that we would judge them at some level. And yeah, I have the same problem. We both are into IT, and he says he wouldn't want to do anything with IT, but don't know what So we really don't know. We are so stuck because we don't know anything apart from this industry. And he just doesn't want to do anything to do with it at all. We have taken him to office, and again he interacts only with clones like us, who talk the same thing.
Correct.
So I totally will appreciate if you start something like that, probably, and that will be a starting point for unheard teenagers to be actually feel at home at some place.
So Bala and Aarti, since both of you have talked about creative writing, and I mean Aarti has talked about exploring more creative modes of expression, there is a very interesting course on creative writing. It's only a 5-hour course, and the instructor comes very highly recommended from one of our old parents. And the child is actually very good at math and science, but is exploring a different aspect of himself with this teacher. So do consider that course. The second thing you mentioned, Bala, I think is a very, very good idea, like the book club. And I will expand that idea. So some children want a book club, some children want a math study circle, maybe some children want to do some coding kind of stuff. See, children, for example, he's reacting saying, IT I will not do. But maybe in the next 6 months, he will attend a course by us where he will, use a Python script to do text mining of Harry Potter text, right? Discover something in that, then he may suddenly become less resistant to technology. So I think, how old is the child now?
He's 14.
14, yeah. So we still have some time. So I do think in the next couple of years, some of this kind of rich opportunities, community, basically, what are we trying to do, right? The school, I would say, is one of the key communities, and now we are trying to extend this community. Online has thrown up some opportunities as well. So certainly we'll be in touch with you and try to expand that community so that, he gets these additional inputs.
Yeah.
Thanks, Vishnu. Thanks, Bala. I think we are over time. I just want to point everybody's attention to the link that Vishnu's posted there. It's an excellent podcast from Dr. Paula from the Northwestern University Center for Talent Development. We also have other podcasts, including from our very own Radha as well on our website. So if you find some time, please go through that. Thanks again for coming, everybody. Next session is scheduled for next Saturday, same time, a week later. Have a great week ahead.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, people.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.